Hello and welcome to the Authority of Love. I'm Greg Williams, and again, it's another fabulous Family Foundation Friday. And try saying that 3 times fast. But we have David Walls, Executive Director of the Family Foundation, with us. Welcome, David.
Greg, good to be with you on this still celebrating Independence Day week.
Yes, Independence Day week, and we're celebrating July as Life Month as well. We're going to keep that going.
That's
so
right.
Appreciate that. Every day is Life Day and Life Month for us as believers. And so, David, I know we've got some things to catch up on. Let me do a little something here. If you missed any of these, or just recent ones, you can go to wjmm.com, click the podcast tab on the right, the Love and Lordship links you'll find today and the previous 2 days. If you want more than that, you can go to loveandlordship.com. That's our ministry website, Love and Lordship, A and D in the middle, no ampersand, and you'll find these and many other podcast videos and articles. David, we've got a lot to cover today, and so I want to jump right in. We got some great things. It's so wonderful that the last several weeks we've had numerous really victories to report on. And so I want to start this week with the recent religious liberty victories at the Supreme Court. Share with our listeners about those.
Yeah, Greg, Friday of last week, June 30th, was essentially the end of this Supreme Court term. And as we have seen time and time again, some very important decisions are a lot of times held to the last month, last week, sometimes the last day of the term. And, one of the most important cases that we have been following, and a number of folks have been, was a decision they issued on Friday in this case known as 303 Creative. And this was had to do with another Christian in the state of Colorado. Folks may remember Jack Phillips and his ongoing situation in case it went to the Supreme Court. But this had to do with a Christian who did website graphic design, and so she had wanted to start doing graphic design for weddings on the digital side, and once again came into conflict with this Colorado law, a so-called non-discrimination ordinance, non-discrimination laws, sometimes called fairness ordinances or fairness laws. Really what the state of Colorado had used these to do against Jack Phillips is really target people of faith and say that you have to essentially try to coerce you into using your gifts and talents to celebrate or say a message, participate in something that violates your sincerely held religious beliefs. And of course, Greg, as you know, so many of these battles over religious liberty have centered over views on marriage and human sexuality, wanting to stand for biblical truth when it comes to the what we know marriage is the union of a man and a woman. I'm just thrilled. This decision, it was a 6-3 decision in favor of Laurie Smith in this case. An emphatic decision that the U.S. Supreme Court upheld her free speech rights very broadly. And this really is a milestone victory for free speech and religious liberty. What the Supreme Court essentially said is that the government can't force you to promote something that's in violation of your beliefs in a message that you don't want to be a part of promoting. I would argue that's a pretty common sense, broadly supported concept. But unfortunately, in the day and age in which we live, a lot of times these policies, either at the local or state level, have been used in this manner against Christians a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, David. I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking about this, you're talking about they constantly attack marriage, and as we've known for 50, 60 years that the core of a lot of this is sexuality and sexual orientation, and the one boundary that God put on sexuality was marriage.
Yeah.
One man and one woman for life. And I say in our book, which you can find at our website, loveandlordship.com, there's an icon right in the middle of the homepage, The Authority of Love, 2nd edition. But you can, I say in that, it's interesting. I think the enemy sits back and laughs at us while we talk about all this in our churches, but don't do what really needs to be done to strengthen marriage.
Yeah.
Not just marriage itself, but all that marriage touches, like people doing weddings and stronger marriages and families, generational discipleship, these things. We think we're getting it done in our churches. If we look around our culture, we're not.
Yeah.
And so this is all a part of it,
right,
at the systemic level. So we had another religious liberty case that was won last week at the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah,
as well.
A couple days before that, there was a case. This was actually ended up being a unanimous 9-0,
which is amazing
victory. But this had to do with a U.S. postal worker that had for years not worked on Sunday and had got an accommodation from the U.S. Postal Service. And actually, this has to do with when they signed a contract with Amazon, and the Postal Service started delivering for Amazon on Sunday, and so the Postal Service refused really to give an accommodation to I'm forgetting the gentleman's name in this case now.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Groff, excuse me, was his last name. But he won an important victory in this case where the U.S. Supreme Court really clarified something that was really necessary, that says that, look, under federal law, employers have to give religious accommodations to employees.
Yeah. He still was doing his job,
right? Absolutely,
but he also he wanted to honor his what he called his Sabbath,
right,
a religious term, and understandably so. Interesting. These are on the federal level,
right?
We have those are great law-filled, common sense, as you called it, David, victories.
Yeah,
it just makes sense. On the local level, we've talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that we have some really bad lawless guidance that's coming out of Governor Beshear's Department of Education, in which he's saying, SB 150, we're going to try and find every way we can to flip that. We know what the intent was, but we're going to try and find loopholes. We're going to guide our schools to actually do what is not in line with the law. And guess who jumped right on board?
Yep, local school district
Fayette
here,
County Public Schools. That doesn't surprise me. I worked with them for a while. Doesn't surprise me. It saddens me, but it doesn't surprise me. What do we need to do with regard to that?
Well, Greg, we had encouraged. Of course, we put out a lot of information. You and I have talked about the, this false guidance, really, that the Kentucky Department of Education under the Beshear administration had put out. But the Fayette County Schools, we had encouraged our supporters to contact the board and encourage them to actually follow the law. We had a lot of supporters in the Fayette County area that had done that. Unfortunately, the school board essentially had a meeting and decided they were just going to move forward with this flawed guidance anyway.
Guidance, yes.
So we would just encourage folks to continue. Look, it's never a bad thing to reach out to your local elected leaders, your school board members. I encourage folks to continue to reach out. There's obviously this new school year hasn't started yet, so they need to continue to hear from folks here
parents
locally.
And students, yes.
And honestly, I would encourage wherever you are, or if you've got friends and family, it would be important to check with your local school board and see make sure they're making a decision to follow the law for these common sense protections against SB 150. Greg, another important local issue that ties back into the Supreme Court cases that you and I were just talking about is, and the Attorney General Daniel Cameron recently put something out on this, but there have been the Colorado law that went after the Christian graphic designer is very similar to. We don't have a state law that does that, but there's local ordinances that we've been involved in combating, and others have for years and years.
Particularly Lexington and Louisville.
Lexington and Louisville, and the one in Louisville, there's a Christian photographer that had challenged the local ordinance in Louisville, asserting very similar, claims that that local ordinance was going to seek to force her to use her gifts and talents to express messages through photography in support of same-sex weddings. And so that case, Chelsea Nelson had filed that lawsuit. Our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom had been defending her. They were the ones defending Lori in the U.S. Supreme Court case as well. So that case has been playing out and is headed up to the Sixth Circuit. And so the Attorney General has now put a letter, essentially put the city of Louisville on notice and said, you need to drop this this fight in light of this overwhelming decision by the United States Supreme Court, saying that essentially when these ordinances and laws, so-called fairness, come in contact with your First Amendment freedoms, the Constitution trumps.
Yeah.
Now, I would argue,
and your religious
Greg,
liberty,
that's
your
right.
conscience
And I would
trumps,
argue,
yes.
unfortunately, a lot of these local ordinances are specifically designed to target First Amendment freedoms.
Well, we know
and
that
rights.
by the outcomes.
Right.
We know that who they're targeting and trying to go after. And so the interesting thing is we have the precedent now, a very good precedent, in coming by saying we're going to fall in line with what the Constitution says and allow you your religious liberty.
Right.
And so I think it's wise on Attorney General Daniel Cameron's part to say, let's not waste, as you mentioned to me, David, taxpayers' money with this.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I believe that case is supposed to be argued at the Sixth Circuit here later this month.
ADF might want that to go forward because it's looking pretty good for them, but at the same time, do we waste taxpayers' money?
We will have to see. And as we saw in Colorado, they've gone after Jack Phillips multiple times. I mean, a lot of times those that are
still going after him, from what I understand, in some of the readings.
So certainly some reasons to be encouraged, though, and a continued sign that our the current makeup of the court is reasserting some foundational rights and correct understanding of the Constitution in some important areas. So
we got a couple minutes. I want to do this. First of all you got to do is go on the Fayette County site or your local board. Go on their website and they type in your address or whatever usually, and you can find your board member. Call the central offices. Call them and let them know you don't want that. Whatever you can do to make your voice heard, let's make sure this is happening so our children are not groomed and indoctrinated. Final thing, David, you got a big event coming up, Family Foundation, here in a couple of 3 months. Could you plug that for us?
Yeah, Greg, we've kind of maybe teased this a little bit because you're going to be one of our featured speakers at this event. But this is something our team has been working and praying and planning about for a number of months now. But we're excited to announce that on Saturday, October 7th, here in Lexington, we're going to host our first ever Kentucky Family Forum. And look, our hope, this is going to be an educational event to encourage the body of Christ, to promote a biblical worldview, and to really hopefully build and unify the pro-family movement here in Kentucky. We're going to have a number of state and national leaders. Greg, you're going to be speaking. I know one of our good friends, David Clausen, who directs the biblical worldview at the Family Research Council, is going to be joining us. Some other national leaders, some of our great state legislators, and I won't mention all of them now, but we have a number that are confirmed. And so we're really excited about how this event is shaping up. We have just announced that ticket sales are going live. And folks can go to our website at kentuckyfamily.org/events to find out more information. But we're doing an early bird pricing. Tickets will be $30. It's a day-long event on Saturday, as I mentioned.
Lunch included.
Be very nice lunch. We'll have a keynote speaker at the lunch and some great panel discussions throughout the day on some important, timely topics. So encourage folks to, particularly here in the Lexington area, to go to kentuckyfamily.org and get more information about that event. And I hope you can join us and invite your pastor and church as well.
Yeah, we'd love to have a lot of people there. In spite of the fact that I'm speaking, I'm looking at the list of the other ones. You got a lot of great speakers. I'm excited. Thank you for inviting me. But it should be a great day to champion many of these things that we talk about here with the Family Foundation and on the authority of love. So I want to thank you for joining us. You can find out more, as David said, kentuckyfamily.org/events, or just go to kentuckyfamily.org and click on the events tab. Or you can find out more, and we'll have that on our podcast. We'll have that linked, so you can find that. So you can go to loveandlordship.com. Thank you for joining us. Thanks again for your prayers, and always to the Lord. Make it a great day, and God bless in Christ. Stay tuned for Bill Reeser and Encounter coming right up, and then at 12:45, my good friend Greg Horn and Hope is here. I'm Greg Williams, and you're listening to The Authority of Love.